All right, ready to dive deep into some metaverse podcasts.
Let's do it. I'm excited to explore this list.
We're taking a cue from this awesome article on the Podcastle blog. It's called These Are the Top Metaverse Podcasts in 2025. And, well, it's like having a VIP pass to the best metaverse discussions out there.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so first up we have the Metaverse Podcast.
With Jamie Burke.
Right, hosted by Jamie Burke. This one really dives into the open metaverse.
Yeah, that's a huge topic right now.
I gotta admit, the whole open metaverse thing was new to me.
Oh, it's basically the idea of a metaverse that's not controlled by any one company.
So, like, no Zuckerberg calling the shots.
Exactly. Think decentralized, interoperable, built on open standards, like a Wild West of virtual worlds.
Okay, that makes way more sense. So, does this podcast actually cover how that's being built?
Totally. Jamie Book really gets into the tech side, especially how platforms like Ethereum and Bitcoin are playing a role.
Yeah.
But he does a good job of explaining it, even if you're not a total blockchain expert.
I need that kind of breakdown for sure.
I think everyone does.
Hmm.
In one episode, he was talking about how the open metaverse could totally change how we think about data ownership. Like, instead of big tech companies having all the control, we could have these individual digital wallets that give us way more power over our own data.
Whoa, that's a big idea.
Yeah, it's pretty radical. And there's so much more where that came from. The Metaverse podcast, it covers everything, like the economics of these virtual worlds, even the philosophy behind this whole digital shift.
Okay, this is officially at the top of my to-listen list. It sounds like the kind of show that could give you a serious advantage if you're thinking about, investing in the metaverse or even building something in it.
It's definitely a must-listen for anyone who wants to be on the cutting edge.
Totally agree. But I gotta admit, all this tech talk, it can be a bit overwhelming. I kind of want something a little more approachable, something that maybe tackles, I don't know, like the human side of this whole metaverse thing.
You should check out Hello Metaverse.
With Annie Zhang.
Yes. She's great if you're feeling kind of anxious about what the metaverse might mean for us.
Absolutely. Like, is it going to take over our lives?
She totally gets it. And she does this amazing job of taking those anxieties and actually flipping them. She turns it into an opportunity instead of something to be afraid of.
Okay, I like where this is going.
She talks a lot about the social and cultural impacts. Like, how will it change the way we connect with each other? How will it impact how we learn new things or even how we experience art?
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. I haven't really thought about it like that. It's easy to get caught up in the tech side, but those are the real questions, right?
Totally. And Hello Metaverse really gets you thinking about those bigger picture issues.
It's like we need both perspectives, the deep dive into the technology, but also a look at how it's going to impact our lives.
Exactly. And Hello Metaverse does a great job of pushing you to think critically about how the metaverse can create a better future, not just a more technologically advanced one.
Okay, so we've got the tech-heavy one with the Metaverse podcast, and now a more grounded perspective with Hello Metaverse. But what if you're the kind of person who wants to get into the nitty-gritty, like the actual nuts and bolts that are going to make this whole metaverse thing work? Is there a podcast for that?
You mean like the actual technology?
Yes, like what's actually going to power these virtual worlds?
There's a podcast called Building the Open Metaverse.
Okay, tell me everything.
It's hosted by Mark Pettit and Patrick Kuzi, who are kind of big deals in the tech world.
That tracks. I feel like you need some serious expertise to really get into that side of things.
Oh, they definitely have the knowledge. And they bring on these incredible guests, too, people from companies like Epic Games and NVIDIA. It's a really interesting mix.
Wow, that's impressive. So what kind of topics do they cover? I'm picturing like deep dives into coding and stuff.
It is pretty deep. They talk about everything from AR wearables and VR headsets to the software that's going to be running these virtual worlds. Like, how do you create realistic avatars that can actually show human emotions?
Ooh, good question. That stuff always kind of weirds me out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tricky to get right. And they break down those kinds of technical challenges in a way that's still really engaging, even if you're not, like, a programmer.
I mean, if those are the people building the metaverse, I definitely want to know what they're thinking about. It's like a sneak peek behind the curtain, right?
Exactly. Building the Open Metaverse is the perfect show for anyone who wants to understand the foundation of how the metaverse is being built, especially if you're thinking about, maybe developing for it or investing in those companies.
That's a great point. It's not just for techies, but for anyone who wants to understand how it all works.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got tech, philosophy, a little bit of engineering. But we can't forget about the things that are already happening in the metaverse, right?
Like what?
I'm talking about NFTs, crypto, all that stuff. It feels like every time I turn around, there's a new development.
Oh, for sure. That's where Welcome to the Metaverse comes in.
Hosted by Luke Franks, right?
Yep. He releases a new episode every week, so he's really on top of everything.
I need that. Because sometimes I feel like I'm reading a foreign language when people start talking about NFTs and crypto. Is this podcast a good place to start if you're new to all of that?
Welcome to the Metaverse is actually surprisingly beginner-friendly. He explains things really well, even if you're just starting out.
Okay, that's good to know. I'll take all the help I can get.
He has this one episode where he compares NFTs to digital trading cards, which really clicked for me.
Okay, now that makes way more sense.
Right. It's like, oh, okay, I get it now. So it's not just for, the crypto experts. It's for anyone who's interested in how all of that stuff fits into the metaverse.
So it's like a good overview, but also keeps you up to date on what's new.
Exactly. The great jumping off point. I actually recommend it to a lot of my friends who are just starting to explore the metaverse.
Okay, noted. Welcome to the Metaverse is officially on the list. But, we've talked a lot about what the metaverse could be, the possibilities. What about podcasts that actually look at how it's being used in the real world right now?
Living in the metaverse.
From Business Daily, right.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating look at how companies and people are actually using the metaverse today.
I like that. It's easy to get swept away by all the futuristic predictions, but I also want to know what's actually happening right now.
Well, this podcast explores stuff like how companies are using the metaverse for training their employees.
Interesting, like virtual simulations and stuff.
Exactly. And collaboration, too, or even customer service. They
Yeah.
really go beyond the hype.
Okay, that's cool. Did they give any specific examples?
Oh, yeah. They had an episode with Manuel Bronstein from Roblox.
Hey, Roblox, that's
Oh,
one
wow.
I've heard of. My niece is obsessed.
It's a great example of a company that's already doing some really interesting things with the metaverse. They talked about how kids are using Roblox to learn, even to make money. It's kind of mind-blowing.
That's wild. Like, it's not just a game anymore. It's a whole world.
Right. And Living in the Metaverse does a great job of showcasing how those lines are getting blurred. Like, where does the virtual end and the real world begin?
Yeah, that's a big question.
And it highlights the economic opportunities that are popping up as the metaverse, starts to become more mainstream.
Okay, this is awesome. So we've got a show for tech, one for the human side, one for the building blocks, a general overview, and now one that looks at the real-world applications.
We're on a roll.
Mm.
And there are even more incredible podcasts out there.
Well, let's keep going then. I want to hear all about them. What other gems have you found in the world of metaverse podcasts?
I'm ready.
Oh,
Let's talk about a podcast that gets into the financial side of things, like the systems that are going to underpin the metaverse economy.
that sounds fascinating. I always find the intersection of tech and finance super interesting. What's this one called?
It's called The Money Movement, hosted by Jeremy Allaire.
Okay, the money movement. And it focuses on...
Digital currency, blockchain technology. It might not be entirely focused on the metaverse, but it explores the financial systems that are likely to play a huge role.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like, what's going to power the metaverse economy? How will people buy and sell stuff?
Exactly. What kind of currency will be used? How will transactions be handled? Those are all questions this podcast explores.
Makes sense. So tell me more about this Jeremy Allaire and his podcast.
One thing I really like about the money movement is its global perspective. He interviews guests from all over the world, economists, gamers, tech experts, to get a really well-rounded view of how digital currency is already changing things.
So it's not just about Bitcoin.
Not at all. It's about the broader implications of digital currencies and how they might reshape our financial systems. Like, he talks about decentralized finance, DeFi, and how that could empower individuals and communities within the metaverse.
The money movement. Definitely adding that to my list. But, we've been talking a lot about the technical aspects, the financial aspects. What about the creative side of the metaverse? Like, what about art, culture, those sorts of things?
Oh, we've got something for that too. Have you heard of Metaverse Insider?
Metaverse Insider, that sounds familiar.
It's a great resource for keeping up with everything happening in Web3, the metaverse, and especially blockchain gaming.
So it's not just about the tech.
Definitely not. They cover things like virtual fashion, digital art, even the whole world of virtual influencers.
Oh, yeah, those virtual influencers are getting big.
They are. And it's fascinating to think about how they might change advertising and marketing.
Yeah.
Metaverse Insider also gets into the ethics of the metaverse. Like, how can we make sure these virtual spaces are inclusive and equitable for everyone?
That's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement, but we need to think about those things too.
Absolutely. And Metaverse Insider does a good job of keeping those conversations going.
I'm starting to get a sense that there's a metaverse podcast for everyone out
No,
there.
there totally is. It's like the metaverse itself.
Hmm.
Diverse, expansive, and constantly evolving.
That's amazing. And a little overwhelming. Like, how do you even keep up with all these different podcasts?
Well, funny you should ask. There's actually a podcast for that too.
Wait, seriously, a podcast about metaverse podcasts? That's meta.
It's called Metaverse Podcast Navigator.
Ah.
And it's hosted by these two tech enthusiasts who are like super passionate about finding the best metaverse podcasts out there.
Okay, I love that. So it's like a guide to the guides.
Exactly. They break down all the different categories, highlight new shows, and give you tips on finding the right podcasts for you. It's a great way to discover something new.
Metaverse Podcast Navigator. I'm definitely checking that out. But even with a navigator, there are so many options. Like, how do you even choose which ones to listen to?
You know, it really comes down to your own interests and what you want to get out of listening to a metaverse podcast. Are you looking for information, inspiration, entertainment, or something else entirely?
That's a good point. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. It's about finding what resonates with you.
Exactly. The beauty of the metaverse is that there's something for everyone. And the world of metaverse podcasts reflects that.
That's a great way to put it. Well, I'm feeling incredibly inspired to go on a metaverse podcasting adventure. But before we get too carried away, remember that article from the Podcastle blog we talked about?
Yeah, what about it?
It also mentioned a whole bunch of podcasts that are exploring the future of the metaverse through, wait for it, games.
Like what kinds of games?
Roblox.
Yeah.
It seems like everyone's talking about Roblox these days.
It's true. Roblox is often used as this example of what the metaverse could be. It's already got millions of users, its own economy, and it's blurring the lines between gaming, entertainment, and even education.
It is. Kids are learning to code, design, even making money in Roblox. It's wild.
It's like a microcosm of what the metaverse could be, and it's happening right now.
Which is why it makes sense that these podcasts are using Roblox as a lens to explore the future. It's not just a game, it's a testing ground.
Exactly. For the technologies, the economies, the social interactions that could shape the metaverse.
Yeah,
And it's already happening, which is so exciting.
I love that. It's like the future is here and it's happening in Roblox. Who would have thought?
It's pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just Roblox. There are other games and platforms pushing the boundaries too.
Like what? Tell me more.
Well, think about virtual concerts happening in Fortnite, fashion shows in Decentraland. These platforms are becoming these spaces for creativity, community, even commerce, which is exactly what we envision for the metaverse.
It's incredible. And it's not just about fun and games. There are podcasts out there talking about how the metaverse could change things like healthcare, education, even manufacturing. Imagine going to a virtual doctor's appointment or attending a class in a fully immersive virtual classroom.
Exactly. The possibilities are truly endless, and that's what makes this whole world of metaverse podcasts so exciting to explore. It's not just about staying informed, it's about expanding our imaginations and really thinking about the future we want to create.
It's a journey, for sure. And I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to discover.
So for anyone listening, what are you waiting for? Go find a metaverse podcast that sparks your interest and dive in.
Seriously, grab your headphones, open your podcast app, and get ready to explore.
Because exploring the metaverse through podcasts is like having a front row seat to the future.
And remember, the most important thing is to stay curious, keep exploring, and have fun.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into metaverse podcasts. There's so much more to explore, and we can't wait to share it with you.
Stay tuned for more. Welcome back to our Metaverse Podcast Deep Dive. We've explored the tech, the finance, even the cultural side of the metaverse. But, with all this potential comes a whole other side of the conversation.
The potential downsides.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It can't all be sunshine and roses, right? There have to be some challenges.
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, with all this new technology, there's got to be a catch somewhere, right?
But Into the Metaverse with Kathy Hackle, that's the podcast that really gets into that side of things.
Yeah.
It's not just about the shiny possibilities, but also about what could go wrong.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I'm definitely the kind of person who gets a little nervous about all the unknowns. So tell me, what kind of stuff does Kathy Hackle cover?
Data privacy, for one.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah, if we're spending more and more time in these virtual worlds, who's collecting all that information about us? And what are they doing with it?
Right. And what about online safety? Especially for kids, that's a whole other can of worms.
She talks about that too. And, the metaverse is going to be all about this idea of digital ownership, right? NFTs, virtual land, all that. So Kathy really gets into the ethics of that. Like, who
Yeah.
actually owns what in the metaverse?
Okay. Yeah, those are big questions. I hadn't really thought about that side of things.
It's easy to get swept up in the hype,
Hmm.
you know, but it's important to step back and consider the potential downsides too.
Totally. So it sounds like Into the Metaverse is for listeners who really want to think critically about the metaverse. It's not just about buying into the hype, it's about asking those tough questions and making sure we're being responsible as we build this new world.
Exactly. It's like an antidote to all the metaverse hype. It's about being mindful and making sure we're shaping the metaverse intentionally.
Love it. Into the Metaverse is going on my list. But all this talk about ethics and responsibility, it's making me want to shift gears a bit. What about something a little lighter?
Lighter, like what?
I don't know, maybe something about the business opportunities in the metaverse. I feel like there's got to be a lot of potential there.
Oh, for sure. There are tons of business opportunities. You should check out the Metaverse Marketing Podcast.
With Ben Kunz, right. I've heard of that one.
Yeah, he's great. And he's got a really interesting perspective on marketing in the metaverse. He sees it as this huge opportunity, but also a huge challenge.
How so?
Well, marketing in the metaverse is totally different from traditional marketing. You can't just, like, slap a banner ad on a virtual building and expect it to work.
Right. So what does he suggest? What's the secret sauce?
Ben Kuntz is all about creating engaging experiences. He talks about the power of storytelling, building community, even using those virtual influencers we talked about earlier.
Yeah, those virtual influencers are fascinating. Tell me more about that.
Well, in the metaverse, you don't necessarily need a celebrity to endorse your product. You can create a virtual persona, give them a personality, and have them interact with users in a way that feels like authentic and engaging.
Wow, that's so cool. It's like the ultimate influencer marketing strategy.
It is. And it's just one example of how brands are adapting to this new world.
So this podcast is a must listen for anyone in marketing or advertising.
Definitely. But even if you're not in marketing, it's fascinating to hear how brands are trying to connect with consumers in these new virtual spaces. It gives you a glimpse into how the metaverse is already changing things.
I'm adding the Metaverse Marketing Podcast to my list right now. It sounds like the perfect mix of practical advice and big picture thinking. But we've talked a lot about these broad implications of the metaverse. What about podcasts that zoom in on specific aspects? Like, what about gaming or art?
We've got those too. For gamers, there's the Sandbox podcast, hosted by Sebastian Bourget, one of the co-founders of the Sandbox platform.
Ah, the Sandbox. I've heard of that one. It's like this virtual world where you can create your own games and experiences, right?
Exactly. And the podcast gives you an inside look at how it's being built, the vision behind it. They're doing some really innovative stuff with user-generated content in virtual ownership.
So it's not just for, like, hardcore gamers.
Not at all. Anyone who's interested in the creative potential of the metaverse would find it fascinating. And if you're more into the art world, I recommend NFT Art Talk, hosted by Megan Gardner.
Okay, yeah. NFTs and art are such a hot topic right now. I'm really curious about how that's all evolving.
NFT Art Talk is a great place to dive in. She explores the creative possibilities of NFTs, how they're changing things for artists, the challenges and opportunities they present for the art market. She interviews artists, collectors, curators, people who are really at the forefront of this movement.
So it's like a deep dive into the intersection of digital art and the metaverse.
Exactly. They talk about everything from virtual galleries and exhibitions to these philosophical questions about what even constitutes art in a digital world.
It's amazing how these podcasts are already carving out these niches within the metaverse. There's a show for gamers, a show for art lovers, a show for marketers.
It's just like the metaverse itself, right? Diverse, expansive, and constantly evolving.
And overwhelming. It's like there are so many podcasts. How do you even know where to start?
Well, there's actually a podcast for that too.
Wait, seriously, another one.
It's called Metaverse Podcast Navigator, hosted by a pair of, I guess you could call them Metaverse podcast enthusiasts.
Metaverse podcast enthusiasts. Okay, I love that. So what do?
They basically curate all the best Metaverse podcasts out there. They break down different categories, highlight new shows, offer tips for finding podcasts that align with your interests.
Like a guide to the guides. That's amazing.
Right. It can definitely feel overwhelming with so many options.
Absolutely. So Metaverse Podcast Navigator is definitely going on my list. But even with a navigator, I'm curious, what's your advice for someone who's just starting to explore Metaverse podcasts? Like, how do you even choose where to begin?
I think the best advice is to think about what you're interested in, what your goals are. Are you looking for information, inspiration, entertainment, or maybe something else entirely? and then go from there. Find a show that speaks to you and just dive in.
That's a good point. There's no right or wrong answer. It's about finding what resonates with you.
Exactly. And the beauty of the metaverse and the metaverse podcasting world is that there really is something for everyone.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have. But there's still so much more to explore.
Remember that article from the Podcastle blog we started with? It also talked about podcasts that are looking at the future of the metaverse through, get this, games like Roblox.
Yes. It's fascinating, right? Roblox is often held up as this early example of what the metaverse could be. It's got millions of users, this whole economy built in, and it's blurring those lines between gaming, entertainment, and education.
Exactly. It's like kids are learning to code, they're designing things, they're even earning real money in Roblox.
It's like this mini metaverse economy in action. And it's happening right now.
Which is why it makes sense that these podcasts are using it as a lens to explore the future. It's not just a game, it's a testing ground.
Exactly. For the technologies, for how economies might work, how we interact with each other, it's all happening in Roblox. And it's giving us these clues about what the metaverse could be.
I love that. It's like the future is here and it's
Yeah.
playing out in Roblox. Who would have thought?
It's pretty wild, isn't it? And it's not just Roblox either. There are other games and platforms pushing the boundaries too.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, we're seeing these virtual concerts happening in Fortnite, right?
Oh.
And fashion shows popping up in Decentraland. These platforms are becoming these hubs for creativity, for community building, even for commerce. It's like a glimpse into what the metaverse could be.
It's incredible. And it's not just about entertainment either, right? There are podcasts exploring how the metaverse could change things like healthcare and education. Imagine going to virtual doctor's appointments or attending a class in a completely immersive virtual classroom.
Exactly. The possibilities are endless, and that's what makes this whole exploration of Metaverse podcasts so exciting.
Yeah.
It's not just about staying informed. It's about, like, using our imaginations and really envisioning the future we want to create.
This deep dive has been such an amazing journey, but I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
Oh, absolutely. There's a whole universe of Metaverse podcasts out there waiting to be discovered.
So what are you waiting for? Find a Metaverse podcast that grabs your attention and dive in.
Seriously, open your podcast app, put on your headphones, and get ready to explore.
Exploring the metaverse through podcasts, it's like having a front row seat to the future.
And don't forget to stay curious, keep exploring, and most importantly, have fun.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive into Metaverse podcast. There's so much more to explore, and we can't wait to share it with you.
Stay tuned for more.
Welcome back to our Metaverse podcast exploration. It's amazing how many of these podcasts are looking at the future of the metaverse through games like, well, Roblox.
Yeah, it's a fascinating approach, isn't it? Roblox keeps coming up as this like early prototype of what the metaverse could actually look like. I mean, it already has millions of users and a real economy. It's blending gaming, entertainment, even education all in one.
And it's happening right now. Kids are learning to code, designing things, even making money in Roblox. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. It's like a mini metaverse economy happening in real time, which is why I think it makes sense that these podcasts are using Roblox as a way to think about the future. It's not just a game anymore. It's a testing ground for all these different aspects of the metaverse.
Yeah, it helps to make it all feel less, I don't know, abstract, right? Like the metaverse isn't just this far-off concept. It's already here in some ways.
It is.
Yeah.
And it gives us a glimpse into the potential, but also the challenges.
Exactly, because as cool as all this sounds, we can't just ignore the potential downsides.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in all the possibilities, but we have to be realistic about the risks too. We can't just dive headfirst into the metaverse without thinking about the ethical implications.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to have podcasts like Into the Metaverse, right?
Yeah.
The ones that are really digging into those tough questions about data privacy, online safety, even things like economic inequality in a virtual world.
Right. We need to be having those conversations now while the metaverse is still developing. We have the chance to shape it in a way that benefits everyone, not just a select few.
I totally agree. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Metaverse podcasts, I'm feeling, honestly, a mix of emotions. Excited about the future for sure, but also aware of the responsibility we have to make sure it's a future we actually want.
I feel the same way. The metaverse is a journey, not a destination, and we're all on this journey together.
And the good news is we have these incredible podcasts to help us navigate it all. They're not just giving us information, they're helping us have these important conversations and imagine what the metaverse could be.
And maybe even inspire us to take action and be a part of shaping it.
Absolutely. So if you're listening and you're curious about the metaverse, whether you're excited, skeptical, or maybe a bit of both, I encourage you to find a podcast that resonates with you and just dive in.
Yeah, you won't regret it. Exploring the metaverse through podcasts is like having this front row seat to the future. So stay curious, keep exploring, and most importantly, have fun.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of Metaverse podcasts. We'll be back soon with more deep dives into all things Metaverse. Until then, stay tuned and keep exploring.